Hello and welcome to the Sidekick Stories podcast, encouraging conversations about mental health. Today I'm speaking to Abby Rowe. Abby is an author and multi-passionate creative focusing on everything and all things mental health. Abby, good morning. How are you?
Hello there. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Very well. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk on Psychic Stories. Like the goal of today is to have an open and honest conversation about your mental health journey, to get some insight into the tools and techniques that have helped you. And by discussing your journey, we hope to share and normalize these conversations about mental health, as often people are not alone in these experiences. Does that sound good to you?
It does. It sounds amazing.
Perfect. Well, very quickly, my single question of the day is, please tell us about your mental health journey.
I'll try and cut it short as such.
So
I've basically been diagnosed twice with bipolar. They say it's bipolar 2 rapid cycling. It stems from when I lost my mum. She died when I was 3, and I've basically had the internal struggle since then. So a little girl, 1 minute she's got her mum, next minute she hasn't. Yes,
and that time when at the age of 3, when you're so, I suppose, so dependent on your parents, right?
And it's all the attachment as well. It's when you're 3, you find out who you are as such.
Yeah.
And I was taking on everyone else's emotions at that age. I knew so much negative emotions at the age of 3 before I knew any joyful ones or happy ones, because I was too young to remember, obviously. And throughout that, I don't think I was told until I was about 5, because I didn't understand that she wasn't coming back. And then life just kind of carried on, and it set some very huge things in motion. I got anxious as a little girl very, very quickly. I was very shy. Not now, but I was very shy. I couldn't deal with the emotions that I was feeling at the time as a child. I couldn't eat. I had a very big eating disorder, where a lot of people understand this if they're listening. If you struggle with anxiety, swallowing food can be such a huge issue, especially in children. So I had that to fight with, which felt like forever. So it kind of opened up for me, knowing obviously all the negative emotions all throughout school. I was bullied for not having a mum. That threw up all more emotions.
Kids are so cruel, right?
I knew you was going to say that. They are, aren't they?
I just and I suppose those kids now who are now adults, I hope if you've ever seen them bump into them, they're just like, look, I'm sorry, that was just so unkind. It has such an impact on people. The playground has such an impact on all of our future lives.
Absolutely. And I don't think, it's an avenue I want to go down. I want to do a journal for kids, and I want to do it around bullying and around anxiety, because the whole bullying emphasis at school is not right. Like, I think they don't, I can't explain what I'm trying to say. They don't arm you enough, I guess, to what it could lead into. And I've actually had some of my bullies come back to me and say, can you help me with my mental health, which has been quite ironic.
And did you treat them with kindness?
Of course I did. Of course I did. They shaped me almost. They could have broke me, but they shaped me. So kind of moving on from all of that, with the bipolar, I can't take medication because I've got stage 3 kidney disease. So I've had to do this with nothing.
Yeah. So it just all in your mind.
Yes. And it's like every single day waking up and not knowing who you're going to be. And I've had therapist upon therapist. I've had, all the therapy that you could imagine, counseling from a very young age, and professional help is a must. But when you get to a point where I do, where they look at you and they say you can manage until you can't manage, it's very difficult to get help.
Yeah.
My last therapist was going to say no. The department's going to say no. And my therapist said, yes, we need to actually speak to her, because although she can manage when she can manage, when she is at a place, a manic place or a depressive place, she gets very impulsive. And that's the whole kind of how people can get themselves into trouble, go you know, suicide, do things that they wouldn't normally do, the behavior changes, the emotions get big. So yeah, I've done all the professional kind of help, etc. But for me, I've had to have a management plan. And I think for anyone that's listening, if you struggle from any kind of mental health, it's going to bring on symptoms, you know, like anxiety and things. You're going to know if you're not feeling right. Always talk about it and always kind of explain to people how you're feeling, but don't wait for the professional help. This is where we're going wrong. All I hear all the time is, but there's an 8-week wait, there's a 10-week wait, months. There's months waiting at the minute, and no one is ready to help themselves. They haven't got the tools to help themselves, and it gets to crisis point, and that's when you do something silly. We've lost so many people over, obviously, this lockdown. I've lost a lot of friends. My husband's lost a lot of friends coming from the army. He's, I think, 3 in the last month. And it's having it is, isn't it? And it's having an impact on the people that it's leaving behind, obviously. But to get to that point, these people have waited for professional help and not been able to help themselves. And it absolutely destroys me knowing that what's at their fingertips is so simple. You know, apps, i.e. your app's absolutely fantastic. Journaling like I use. I mean, I've got a management tool belt that's as big as me. I've got so many things, and awareness is the biggest thing for me. I don't think people are aware that everyone's got mental health and you're on a spectrum, and one day a life event might knock you off that spectrum and take you down to a place where you've never been before. You need to know how to get back to where you was before.
So I'd be interested to understand, because I agree wholeheartedly with when the reasons a sidekick exists is to help you help yourself. But it seems to be much more difficult for a lot of people, including myself, to actually do that, and to proactively engage in your mental health, to take the time and the effort to do those daily kind of habits and those exercises that, you know, out of your kind of toolkit that will help you be more resilient. Like, you know, do you have any insight from your own personal experience about how you did manage that? Because, you know, people getting up in the morning who have very little motivation. It's very difficult to do that, isn't it?
Absolutely. I mean, I say fortunate. It's not fortunate that I've had it most of my life, but for me, it's time. Because I've struggled and had that internal battle since I was 3 years old. I've gone through trial and error, and I've learned about myself. I've had to concentrate on my mental health all the time, every day. And a lot of people, you go through life until you hit kind of an obstacle, and then you start thinking about your mental health or start thinking about management tools. For anyone that has lack of motivation, that, I mean, you know, when you get depressed and you're lying in bed for days on end and you don't want to do anything, I personally, I don't do that because I don't let myself get to that point. But that's because obviously I've had so long to be dealing with it. But for someone that's never had it before, and then all of a sudden, you know, they're feeling like they can't get out of bed and feeling worthless and all those horrible emotions, the biggest thing is to talk to someone about it. And it doesn't have to be a professional. It can just be somebody that understands. And and you have to be picky. You have to cherry pick, because I've known people, and myself included, that have spoken to someone and they've gone, get a grip. You know, you've got kids, or you got this, or you should be thankful, and that helps.
It's not the most helpful response sometimes, is it?
It's not. And I think everyone's going to be personal with this, but the way that I get myself out of those really, really low moods is to find something that I absolutely adore. And a lot of people will go, I think of my kids, I think of my family, I think of my life. And unfortunately, when I get to a point where I don't want to be here anymore, none of that. It doesn't matter, but none of that is enough to pull me out. And that sounds awful. It sounds awful. But when you're in a place where you it hurts to be alive, you've got to grab onto something that is selfish for you. 9 times out of 10 it would be addiction for most people. It'd be alcohol or something like that. Don't do that. Mine was writing. That's what I was trying to get at. The love of my life is writing, and there's 1,000 reasons for it, but one of the biggest ones is escapism. So I write, not only do I write guided journals, not only do I write about being an empath and about mental health and all of that lovely stuff, I write dark fantasy about magic and sorcery. And do you know,
my favorite genre?
Is it? See,
my absolute favorite, and I completely agree with you. It is complete. There's nothing better after a long day at work with having had childcare, getting to bed and exploring magic and dragons. And I know and my friends say, "Come on, Matt, you almost
you got your head in the clouds."
Yeah, you're 36 years old. I'm saying, I'm sorry, but I mean, this is. I mean, the as you as a fantasy writer, be interested to understand some of these worlds that people create are just mind-blowing,
aren't they? Just, well, they do turn around and say there is a correlation between people with mental health issues and the fact that they love magic and sorcery and ancient places. And there's a massive link, because I believe it might be a little bit out there for some people, but I believe that our brain, our imagination's massive. We don't have blocks within our imagination. Obviously, we know this because when we have a thought, we get irrational. That thought runs wild. So when it comes to our imagination, it's just plugged into us. We love it. We love magic. We love escapism. We love thinking of different worlds. Anything to get us away from the hurt that we're feeling right now. And that's kind of, I've learned to harness it. I embrace absolutely everything about my mental health. I embrace the good times, the bad times, and the journal that I'm just about to launch is teaching women at the minute to channel their anxious energy into something positive. And that is what I would say to anybody that is feeling remotely depressed or anxious, is find your vessel, find your channel, find your thing that you absolutely love, and focus full-heartedly on that. So it could be running for some people, it could be exercise, it can be movement, dancing, singing. I love singing because I've done a lot of research in this. If anyone struggles with anxiety, you've got what's called a vagus nerve, and it runs all the way through your body. And if you get anxious, I get so anxious that I can't breathe properly. I hyperventilate, and that can last for weeks for me. But if I hum or I sing or I talk, the vibration stimulates the vagus nerve and calms you down. So there's lots of things. It's all the researching, kind of finding things that, even the research could be something that you focus on. How can I get myself out of bed today? How can I, just one step at a time? Don't go full throttle, because with a bipolar person, we go, I want to take over the world. We want everything now, yesterday. Just take one step at a time.
Just going back to what, when, if you don't mind, going back to
absolutely not,
when you were a child as well, like you've obviously done a huge amount of work, and enormous praise to you to get from where you've described where you were to where you are today. Did you feel like you had the support growing up as well from other people around you? Like, was that an important part, or was it something that you really felt that you needed to do on your own?
That's a good question. I did all of it on my own. I tried to talk, but as we know, when you're at school and you try to talk about your feelings, or you don't talk about your feelings, then it's a behavioural issue. And then you get tarred with a brush, and then it starts you on a trajectory that you tend not to talk to people, because that then gives you negative attention, and you don't need negative attention. I was very lucky in regards to when my mum passed away. My nan and granddad stepped up, and first it was hell. I didn't like my nan and granddad around. I didn't know why they was around. And then when I was in my teenage years and I was rebellious, this, that, and the other, they really understood me more than I understood myself. And they helped me massively. to get out of bed in the mornings. I could sleep 24 hours, and we're only talking like 14, 15. There was a lot of stuff I went through that they were there, and I didn't realize at the time that they were helping me, but now looking back, they supported me massively. There could have been support from other people and places, but you know, it's not always, it gets blamed on the fact that you lost your mum as a small child and you're rebellious and blah 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 and you're a teenager, so the support wasn't always there for me. No.
But I suppose we said with your grandparents, not only the support they gave you, but there's that feeling of being loved unconditionally, right?
Absolutely. Oh my God, yeah. It's one of the things. If I feel disconnected from people, it's a big trigger for me. So yeah, knowing that you're loved, and do you know what? Knowing that you're loved, no matter how you lash out, is a big thing for me. Because my dad would get frustrated that I wasn't going to school sometimes because I was being bullied. But my granddad had a really good knack of supporting, but also edging me to school at the same time. And they weren't that old school, you know, get a grip. We went through the war. I was on I'd been bombed, this, that, and the other. I never had any of that. They just knew me. And I was very lucky.
And also, like you said, like, it took the time to get to know you as well, because that's, you know, it's that's an enormous undertaking, isn't it, for them to, like you said, to step up. And, you know, it's not,
sacrifice.
I've got a 2-year-old daughter, like, and I'm her father. I mean, it's tricky at the best of times. When someone, like you said, when you're in a situation where a child, you know, has lost one of their parents, and to get that support from someone who isn't your parent, it's amazing, isn't it? I mean, that is enormous. It's an enormous responsibility that they put on themselves, and you know, that's, you know, it's massive, isn't it?
It is. The weirder thing about this is, so my nan and granddad were on my dad's side. My granddad died of cancer on my mum's anniversary. Which was very strange. It was almost like she came down and went, "Come on, let's go," because he did struggle, bless him. But yes, their support was amazing.
And so talk to us about, so, you know, you mentioned about your writing as well, like, you know, especially around writing fantasy and journaling as well. I'd love to hear a bit more about that, perhaps specific on the books that you've written and how they can help people. You mentioned that the recent book that you've launched is focused for women with anxiety. Is that something that could be used by men, by children at the same time? Is it something, or are there other books out there that you can recommend and you can support?
Okay, so the first book that I did was the Higher Self Journal, and that was because at the time I had my own journey within journaling. I was connecting to the higher self side of it. The book that's just about to release in 2 days is called The Calm Journal. So it's the second guided journal. And this one is aimed at women, but I have had so many people say, is there going to be one for men? Is there going to be one for kids? I plan on doing both. I am with the bipolar. If I get in a creative mood, I can do one of these in a couple of days. I love them. I'll keep sending out guided journals, but yes, I will be definitely doing one for kids. The men's one, sorry, is a little bit tricky because it's being written by a woman. And although, yes, absolutely, I sent one, I had 10 VIP boxes that I sent out, and one of my friend's husband got hold of the Calm Journal and said, this is amazing. I will use this. It's very much focused for women, but absolutely anyone can use it. The terminology obviously is not kid friendly, I don't think, so I wouldn't say children, but teenagers, absolutely. I think me and my husband, or there's a couple of other men that want to collab to do this men's version of it, so it's definitely something in the pipeline. And yes, it will help everybody.
And it'd be interesting to understand from you said your first book was connecting to your higher self. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So journaling isn't just diary entry like most people think. Journaling is using your imagination. It's self-expression. It's using the written word to channel everything that you're feeling into words, into the journal, sorry. And higher self is something that gets thrown around in the spiritual coaching world. And I used to hate that word. I was like, what, you mean someone above me? Or didn't understand the connection of it. Now, doing a lot of research myself, I basically thought of this, the higher self, as someone on the top of a mountain, me on a top of a mountain, a future self. And I'm at the bottom, and there's a massive jungle, and I'm trying to get through it. And your higher self can see the ways that you should go, see the decisions you should make, see all, you know, all the bad bits of life, and basically maneuver you to get to the highest point in your life, to get to the better version of yourself. Now, whether that's a bit woo-woo for some people, whether it's, you know, using your imagination, it's totally up to them. But the higher self for me is a future version of myself that's done everything that I've done today and knows exactly what to do and what not to do. And connecting with that higher self, it's almost just asking yourself questions and answering them honestly, and going with whatever you write down. It's the free flow of writing that's important. And whether you call that your higher self, your inner guide, your guides, whatever you want to call it, it's an inner knowing.
So it's taking the time to almost, you know, taking the time to step back and ask yourself, what is the best decision for me at this time? And I suppose it's, you know, I certainly find if you can articulate why you've done something, even if it's gone wrong, but if you can articulate why you did it at the time, and that was the most informed and best decision at the time, then that doesn't make it necessarily a bad decision. That it was a good decision at the time that for X, Y, and Z turned out not the way that you thought about it. That doesn't make it bad. It just you know, it just makes it different, right?
It's a lesson. It's that people unfortunately don't like making mistakes. They feel that it's failure, and they feel that it's taken them down the wrong path. But I believe everything you do is the right thing, whether it's a really bad thing or not. It's the right thing at the time you thought it was the right thing. Don't double back on yourself. Go with, you know, when I say bad, we're not talking, you know, bad, but if it's not a great decision, it's you have to learn from that, and you've done it for a reason.
And is there, I suppose, is there a reason why you focused on journaling? Is it purely your personal experience about how you found it so beneficial, or is it something that connects up that kind of element of creativity within yourself and enables people to be creative themselves? Because a journal, you know, a journal isn't a book, is it? It's not, you know, you don't read it.
It's a mini therapist.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and there's huge amounts of research saying the benefits of journaling, and just that act of putting pen to paper.
Yeah, it is just that.
And actually, I was going to say there seems to be a difference between putting pen to paper compared to getting your phone out and writing a note in your phone. I don't know why there's a difference there, but it seems to be.
Because it uses a certain part of your brain. It's the calming aspect of your brain. When you put pen to paper, I mean, I could go to the point, if I've got a scratchy pen, it will frustrate me, and it won't have the same effect if I have a soft nibbed pen, because the whole gliding across the page and you have to set yourself that intention of just calming down and writing, and you only think about writing. You don't think about breathing. You don't think about thoughts.
Very
you don't think about,
isn't it?
Exactly that. Whereas a phone aspect, I believe that both of them are equally, you know, they're both very different, and they're both equally as beneficial, because you're monitoring your thoughts, you're monitoring your moods, you're expressing yourself within writing. Some people just sit there and go, I don't know what to write, I haven't got a clue, but they're thinking about it too much. They've literally just got to write about their day, write about the best thing in their life, or whatever. And as soon as you open those floodgates, you'll be so surprised at what you can get out at the end of it.
And it's interesting. Like I certainly, I've never written a book. I've got huge admiration for, you know, people like yourself, Abby, who have written books, because it seems an enormous, you know, it is a huge effort. When, if anything, I have ever done any creative writing, then, you know, I went through a phase of actually really enjoying it, writing some, you know, some little short stories and fiction, and I was struggling. And a friend of mine just said, "Man, well, like, just bloody write. Just like start writing, like just start anything." And I was like, God, that's simple. And I just sat down, and suddenly, and I was on my computer, I just started typing away. And by the end of that hour, I got a couple of pages, and it might not have been brilliant, but it was much more than I had before, which was 0.
But it feels fantastic. It's
Yeah.
like a release.
It did feel good.
I liken anxiety as trapped. I don't know your thoughts with energy and stuff, but it's factual that we're all made of energy. And I feel that anxiety is trapped energy. Now, if you're channeling that into something that's expressive, i.e. writing, singing, dancing, something expressive, it feels great at the end of it. It doesn't matter what you've written on the page.
It's almost like a release, isn't it?
It is. It's exactly that, because 9 times out of 10, I will write page after page after page after page in my journal, and I don't need to read it back. I've just offloaded everything that I'm frustrated, angry, resentful of. I don't need to read it back. I just carry on with the next lot.
Yeah, and that's interesting. We had a chat with someone, I think, on a previous podcast, which said exactly that. You can just write for pages and pages, and at the end of it, you can just burn it. And actually, and some people do find that very therapeutic, just writing all this stuff, getting it, and then just getting rid of it.
Rituals are amazing. It is that, it's being able to have a conversation with yourself and then close that book, and you don't need to think about it, because that, if you think about mental health, that is our issue. We are not releasing what's rattling around in our head. We are not understanding ourselves, being aware of ourselves, being aware of the internal dialogue. If you can actually have a conversation with that little gremlin inside, it releases everything. There's no more hiding, because anxiety, I think, is fed by fear. And if you're constantly fearing your thoughts, and you're constantly fearing what you're going to be thinking all the time, if you can get it down on paper, it's just so much easier to deal with. And then you can problem solve if something does come up. You can track your moods, you can track what you're saying, you can track your thoughts. It's just so much
patterns.
There's so much. Always put the date at the top. I always do. It's just get into the habit of doing it.
And you can see that. You can almost see that. How your emotions, or your kind of chronological journey of your emotions as well.
That was how I was diagnosed the second time. So the first time I was diagnosed with bipolar, it took a year for them to understand what was going on. There was a lot that came up about mum, because she had signs of bipolar. Unfortunately, we still don't know, but we think that she walked into the road when I was 3, and that's the emotions got to. It kind of it's something that bipolar people do. Are very impulsive, but I've lost my train of thought. What were we saying?
Well, we're just going back to that, that very kind of tragic thought you had as well, like that, you're not necessarily sure if that's 100% true or not, but it doesn't matter. Like, it is a possibility in your mind, and the thought of that for a child, for a teenager, for an adult, even the possibility of that can really, really affect how your own behavior comes out, like you said, but also as well how you view your past, and that very key figure is your mum as well, which is it's some very complicated emotions around that.
Oh, it's the belief system of it, isn't it? Absolutely. If it's already kind of implanted in you, then yes. And those thoughts are really difficult to get away from. And
and do you find, I'm interested, it seems like your main focus is around writing and journaling. That's really helps you. Is there anything else that's really helped? You've talked about some professional help, which we always advocate for, especially in times of crisis. Is there anything else that you found which are kind of free, simple kind of tools, tips and techniques that have helped you along your way?
I've got hundreds of them, but yes. And the first things I would say, so I've written 6 tips down here. They're not actually things that you can do, but there are tips I would give people. So the first one I've said, no, you're not alone. There's always support. So I think when people are at a stage where they think, what on earth is going on with me, they feel alone, and they're not. There's so many other people out there that struggle, that not the same, but have the same kind of struggles that they do. Don't be put off by waiting times for professionals. Start the work ASAP.
Yeah.
Realize, be aware, but start working on yourself as soon as you start feeling these extra emotions, etc. Always remember, you come first. It's the plane analogy, isn't it? Put your mask on first, and then kind of. I used to struggle with this because my therapist used to say, you can't help people if you can't help yourself. But helping people for me was helping myself. But yeah, you have to kind of get a balance with that. You come first. Be kind to yourself always.
Which is
that's a
quite
given,
hard.
really.
Quite hard
It
sometimes.
really is.
That negative chatter that goes through your mind, it's very difficult to stop, isn't it?
Oh, it is. Especially, yes, it can get very, very loud. But I've almost made friends with mine. So don't fight it. Don't fight it. Embrace it. It's trying to tell you something. Always have a management plan. Literally, me and my husband, we're not the best at it sometimes because we can both struggle at the same time, which is never good. But if you've got someone in your life and you're feeling like you could run away in all sense of the word, then you need to be asking for help. You need to be explaining how you feel and knowing that you can do that and it's safe to do that. You're not going to get carted away. Your kids aren't going to get carted away, because a lot of people think, oh my God, I've spoken to single mums that have not gone to the doctors because they feel like their children are going to be taken away because they're getting all these ridiculously psychotic thoughts. But the starting point is talking to someone about it. You're never going to get your kids taken away from you just for talking to somebody. It's so big. And then one of the biggest ones for me is knowing that it's going to pass. It's knowing that if I'm in such a state that I've got over this 1,000 times before, I can do it again. And it's almost giving yourself that pep talk. And I have management tools that come out of my ears. So things like yoga, meditation, walking, moving, self-care apps I use. So the actual tools I use peppermint oil. I drink peppermint tea. I've used CBD oil, and I use that quite a bit because it's good for bringing me down off my manic modes. Obviously talking about it, writing, journaling. There's so much, listening to music. It's almost learning how to feel your emotions properly and being aware that when an emotion gets triggered, not to be stuck on why it was triggered. Let that go, because we always, we sit there and go, oh, this started because I don't know, I had a fight with my husband. There's something underlying the reason that your emotion's going crazy. So and it's knowing yourself, knowing what you need. Ask yourself every single day, what do I need today?
Yeah. And I suppose it's taking the time every day to do that. Do you find it's hard to do it when you're in a manic mood?
Massively.
Yeah.
So I can get manic depressive modes, which this is why it's rapid cycling and it's all over the place. Sometimes I don't even know what I am in. And I'll sit there and I'll be like, I need to relax, I need to calm down, but I can't because my thoughts are racing so much. I need to do something with my body, and it's scary. It really is.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I mean, for anyone who's listening who does suffer from bipolar, manic depression, Abby, what helps you kind of climb down from a manic state, or is it something that you just ride out? Is there something, like you said, you've got a high frequency and high cycling? Is there tools and tips where you can say, okay, I recognize I'm in a very very fast changeable cycle. This is what will I suppose, bring me down to a reasonable level where I can actually think?
It's journaling for me. It's writing. It really is. It's the only thing that gets my mind off how I feel. Because as I say, I overbreathe, which can get to the point where you take in too much oxygen, then you feel like you can't breathe. And my fear is not being able to breathe. So it's like slowly suffocating. The only way I can get out of that is to breathe out more than I breathe in. But when you're in it, it's very difficult. I've got lots of tools. I've got a little flute thing that I blow into. I've got lots of breathing techniques I do. But one of the biggest things is and professionals will hate me saying it, is distraction.
Mm.
But it has to be a distraction that isn't a safety measure for you. Does that make sense?
So yeah. So what would be yours?
It is journaling. It's picking up a pen.
So,
and
so that is your measure.
Writing.
Right, okay, yeah,
Writing.
Yeah.
Even if I'm in a restaurant and I have a panic attack, the first thing I'll do is get a pen out of my bag and I'll write on a napkin, even if it's just to calm myself down.
Yeah. Well,
it's
Abby,
very strange.
Well, Abby, thank you so much. You've given us tools, tips, techniques, and if I'm very honest, like you've really validated the reason that sidekick exists and psychic stories exist. Like it's recognizing that when there is something going wrong, you can act. You don't need to wait for, you don't need to wait on a long waiting list. Great, put yourself on a waiting list, but you don't just wait there in misery. There's so many things you can do, and I know it's hard to do that, but there are lots of free tools and tips out there that you can try. Work out what works best for you, put them in your toolkit, and if you make it a priority, because this is the other thing, if you don't make it a priority, then it's never
you've got to want
work.
to.
Yeah,
you've got to want to help yourself.
Yeah. And the reality is that whilst we certainly do agree that that medication is a very important part often of a mental health journey, a pill isn't going to solve the issues. It might help you manage, but it's not going to help solve them. You've got to do this stuff on your own, and it's hard work.
The amount of times I've sat and been really quite poorly and said, if someone could give me a pill right now and say to me, this is going to take this away from me, I'd take it.
Yeah.
An easy solution, but it's never easy.
Yeah, no, I agree. But that might be temporary, in terms of, okay, that will take it down. But once you've taken it, it's given you the space and time in your head to be able to work on whatever issue that needs to be solved, and however you tackle that. It is about that self-awareness, and it is about that talking. But honestly, Abby, you have I think you've really advocated everything that we stand for. So thank you very much for that, for such a fascinating, insightful conversation.
Thank you.
And thank you to everyone listening. You can subscribe to us on most major podcast platforms, YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Just search for Sidekick Community or Sidekick Stories and we'll pop up. Please do give us a rating if you like the show. And as Abby has kindly mentioned, please do check out our free Sidekick app for iPhone and iPad. Yes, it's free. A collection of interactive exercises, tools, and tips to help you boost your mental well-being. The app enables you to build a personalized well-being toolkit to help you deal with life's challenges and ups and downs. Just go to our website, www.sidekick.org.uk, and click the download now button in the header to take you to the App Store. Abby, thank you so much again.
Thank you.